guys, today we're going to be talking about this optic right here. I bought this optic off Amazon, and the reason why I made this video is because every time I look on Amazon, if you just type in red dot site or any sort of red dot site in general, usually something like this will pop up. And it's the cheapest red dot site that I've seen on Amazon. You can get these anywhere from, the cheapest one I saw was I think $18, and generally they run anywhere up to $35 depending on who's making them. I didn't look too closely to see if there's a difference between the $18 one and the $35 one. I would assume there probably is, but I didn't look too close into it. This one was, I think, $30 when I got it. And I got this a few months ago. I've just been waiting to make this video since I had a chance to shoot it at the range. And I've had a chance to shoot my Tavor with this at the range, which is kind of funny because the Tavor is a very expensive rifle and this is a very inexpensive optic, so they don't actually go together, but I thought it would be a good test bed because an AR-15 is slightly less, I don't want to say it has less recoil, but it recoils softer, versus a Tavor is a piston system design. So kind of like an AK, it's a little bit harsher, but it's not quite as harsh as an AK, so I thought that would be a pretty fair test bed for this. Because I had one of these optics about 8 years ago, and it broke on me. I wasn't able to get it to hold zero, and I only had it on a Smith & Wesson M&P 1522. So it was on a 22 rifle that has absolutely no recoil, and the thing would not hold zero. Every time I went to the range, I thought, oh, well, I need to re-zero my gun. I must not have zeroed it. But every time I re-zeroed it and took it back to the range, it would never be back on zero. So I eventually gave up on that, and actually parts of it fell off. The springs on the inside here, which I'll talk about a little bit, like broke. So I ended up throwing the thing in the trash. So I wanted to buy another one, see if maybe I got a lemon. I don't know, maybe if they change some designs on here to where it works better. But I want to talk a little bit about this, and I got this one specifically from this brand here. I don't know if it's CVLife or how you pronounce this, but there's a bunch of different companies that make it. That's the one I bought it from. So again, the point of this channel is to find cheap things that work, and this is kind of one of those. I don't know that I necessarily have made up my mind on whether or not I would buy one of these. I think there's very limited times or very limited roles in which I would use something like this, but it's not complete garbage that I thought it was going to be. It did better than I thought it would do. So, and again, I've owned one of these before and nothing broke, so I assumed whenever I bought another one it was going to do the same thing, and I was pleasantly surprised that it did better than the old optic. And again, I don't know what they updated or if they made internal changes. I believe they did make one change to help it hold zero a little bit better, and I think that did help. But overall, just my view of this is definitely not something you should bet your life on at all. For the most part, I would say this is more of a range gun toy kind of optic, or maybe something to put on your 22, you know, or something to shoot out in the backyard, shoot cans, you know, something like that. It would probably be fine for that, but it's not very durable, and it doesn't really hold zero under any sort of stress. So that said, let's talk about kind of the different things on here, what I like, what I don't like, and kind of its issues. So the height of it is, you can see on here, this is a Bushnell TRS 25. This is a new model that I don't recommend you buy, but if you look at them, they're basically the exact same height. So it is a absolute co-witness height. So if you have an absolute co-witness red dot or something already, just know that this will line up perfectly with your iron sights, so you can use your iron sights through this and you can see them. So the height on this is good. Just know on guns that have a higher cheek piece, you know, where it's more in line with the Picatinny rail, like on a Tavor, you're gonna have to really smush your face down in order to see this. But on something like an AR, the height is fine. It has two different colors for reticles. It has red and green. So there's your green, and you can see there's your red. And it also has 4 different reticles on here. So you have one, which is a, see if it'll focus on it. So you have one that is kind of a circle with a crosshair and a dot. It's kind of a weird mixture. You can see them on the back of this, hopefully. Let's see if it'll focus. There it goes. So you can see the reticles here. You got one that's kind of a crosshair with a circle with the dot in the middle, and then you got another one that's just a crosshair, and you got another one circle dot, kind of in EOTech, and then you just have a regular dot. So I generally like the EOTech reticle for most optics that I have, so the fact that this has that is pretty cool. The fact that you can change it between red and green is neat, because the red, I will say, is dim enough to where you can use it in the dark or in low light situations, and you don't get, as you can see on there, there's a little square that kind of goes around that reticle whenever you turn it up in brightness. So right now it's on a 5. On the green it shows up a lot more. So you can see that box right there. And you see that whenever it's not just the camera, you see that whenever you have it on your gun too. So if your reticle is too bright, you kind of see that. But the bad thing is the green is too bright even in a dim room during the daytime when you have light coming through the windows, so that's kind of obnoxious. But the red is fine for indoor use. So I would use the green outside, the red inside, if you were to buy this thing. But the reticle is cool. I like that. I don't like the fact that I'll put a picture here of what kind of how they advertise it, but it is not parallax free. They put on there parallax fixed. I can't remember the terms. Again, I'll put a screenshot of what they labeled as on Amazon. But this thing is not parallax free at all. It's not as terrible as some optics I've seen out there. The Trijicon MRO, me and Rhett had one. We took it to the range, tested it out, and it actually has pretty bad parallax. At 50 yards, we were about 6 inches off whenever we would try to fire it, aiming here, putting the red dot in different locations with your head behind the rifle in a different spot. The parallax was bad. So I can't necessarily knock it for that, but I'll insert a video here so you can see kind of how much the parallax moves. And again, it's worse up close than it is at distance, but it does have, at about 30 yards, the dot will move anywhere from 4 to 6 inches that you can see, and I'll insert that video here. Alright, so if you were looking at the reticle from directly behind and you zeroed it in, this is where your aim would be. Notice as you move off, the reticle point of impact shifts. That means this optic is not parallax free, which it doesn't claim to be technically, but they try to make it seem as if it is. Now up close, this actually looks worse than it does at a distance. At a distance on here, on the camera, you can't tell, but it moves on that shed over there. If I were to move it over there, let's see here. See if I can get it on the shed. Yes. So you won't be able to tell as much of a difference. I don't think you can tell on camera. You can't really tell on camera that much. Well, maybe you can't. Yeah, you can see it shifting right there. See how the reticle moves up and to the left, up and to the right. It's not as bad on camera as it is in the naked eye, but this movement right there at that distance, which is only probably about 25 yards, maybe 30, it's moving it on that shed probably a good 6-7 inches, which is significant. So the farther out you go, the worse it would get. So again, it's not super precise, but you could still make hits on a target, to this optics credit. Now, one positive I'll give for this thing is it does have really clear glass. If you look on there, you can see there's very little color discoloration whatsoever. And part of that is they don't really have a coating on the outside. It's kind of like a silver coating, so it's very reflective. But you can see everything right through there. So there's not much of a coating on there, but it is silver. It's not like red or tinted or anything like that. Now, it does use a 2032 battery, which, I mean, it's a very common battery. That's nice. It fits right inside this compartment here. All you do is unscrew this little knob, and the top will pop off, and you can put your battery right in there and screw it down. So, uses a common battery. That's not an issue. The other positive thing, I guess, about this is it's fairly small, fairly lightweight, and it looks cool. If any of y'all have ever played Call of Duty, you know what this optic looks like. It's the standard red dot on pretty much every Call of Duty game, so that's why I bought it initially, because I didn't know any better. And so I was like, oh, that looks cool, and I didn't know what was a good red dot, what wasn't at the time, and so I bought one, and I was disappointed. I still like how this thing looks. It's still cool. But with all that said, that's pretty much all the positives I will say about it. Actually, that's not true. One more positive thing. It did hold 0. You'll get mixed reviews on Amazon if you go through and, oh, it won't hold 0. Oh, it will hold 0. I think I know why. So with my old model, I don't think it had, hopefully you can see in here, there's a little detent right there. You can see that little silver ball, and there's a metal piece right there that kind of provides pressure. So whenever you spin the windage elevation and windage knob, there you got the elevation up here, windage here. Whenever you turn that, it does click. So it has a detent that holds it in place so that doesn't move. I don't think that was on the older model that I had. I think that's why it constantly lost 0. Now this one on the Tavor held 0. Now I've only shot maybe 100 rounds at the most through this gun on the Tavor, because to be honest, I wasn't willing to spend more ammo on that because this is not an optic I'm going to use. It was just something to see if it could survive initial recoil for, you know, a few amount of rounds. And if it could do that, then I would say it probably wouldn't have that issue, because my previous one, it wouldn't hold for any amount of issue. I would fire one round, and this was on a 22, mind you. Fire one round and then fire another round, and it would just constantly just move all over the place. It would never hold zero, not even for 5 rounds in a row. So the fact that this one holds zero for, you know, 100 rounds or so, that means that whatever they did made an improvement. Now, the problem with this design, and this is where I get into the negatives, is it won't hold zero under any sort of pressure. So as you can see on this side, Rhett and one of my other buddies decided to, and I gave them permission, I told them just to start beating on this thing and see if they could get it to lose zero. And they were using the staple gun, and they just dinged on here. You can see they didn't hit it super hard, but they hit it hard enough to kind of dent scratch the aluminum, which this is made out of. And to this thing's credit, the glass didn't break, nothing on there broke. Now, they weren't hitting it all that hard, they were just kind of tapping it. So I just want to see if a little bit of pressure on here, a little bit of violence on the thing itself would cause it to lose zero. And whenever I shot it after that, did not lose zero. So again, I was surprised. I was like, okay, so a few little taps here and there, not going to make it lose zero, so that's not a big deal. So that's kind of cool. But then I decided, okay, well, now I'm actually going to hit it for what I would consider any sort of realistic abuse, whether it's throwing it in a bag, throwing it in the back of your truck, you know, putting it in your range bag and it gets jostled around in the back of the truck, or even in your trunk or something like that. It's not something, it wasn't abuse in my mind that was anything hard or harsh. It was just something that I would consider normal wear and tear, and that is I took a water bottle and just smacked on it from the side, smacked on it from the top, from the front, and from the back. And again, a water bottle, you know, just tapping it, it wasn't that hard, wasn't that rough. But whenever I did that, and I didn't record it, I should have, sorry, it lost zero. And now the reason this thing lost zero whenever I did that is because if you look down in here, let's see if I can get this on. There we go. So if you look down in there, you can see there's springs. So there's a spring right here, and then there's a spring just behind it. You can see it inside there. That spring, whenever it's mounted, if you can watch this, the whole thing will move. So the whole top is spring loaded, and the way that the elevation adjustment works is whenever you screw it down, it tightens this and brings the entire upper part closer to the lower part. So it basically just smushes down. Whenever you loosen it, this end moves up. And then on this end, it's just a rubber piece. It's kind of glued in between there, and that's all that's holding it in place. And then if you look on the bottom right here, let's see if it'll focus. There it goes. So if I move the bottom piece out, you see that? It'll move, so the entire upper part is actually moving to the right now. And that's another spring there, that's how the windage knob works. So everything's under spring pressure and spring tension, and that's how it holds zero. You either loosen or tighten that. So that tells me that this optic would be fine probably as a range toy, or you know, you put it on a 22, it'd probably be fine as long as you're just shooting from a bench or something like that. But if you're going to be rough at all, or you don't baby this thing, it's going to lose zero if you drop this on a table, or you put it down after you're done at the range, or your cats knock it off, or whatever. If this optic gets hit with any sort of force at all, it's going to lose zero. So this is not something that I would say is duty ready. It's not something you should put on a serious gun. It's not something you should put on a gun that you're going to, if you're a cop, you shouldn't put it on your rifle. It's not made for that. This is essentially a range toy and nothing else. So that was my biggest issue with this. But I will say I was impressed. It will hold zero on your firearm as long as it's low recoiling. I don't know that I would put it on an AK. I'm surprised it was able to hold zero on a Tavor, but on an AR it should be just fine. As a range toy, just know that if you bump it, it's probably going to lose zero. So in my opinion, I wouldn't waste money on buying one of these, personally. That's just me, because there's a lot of good options out there that are somewhere around $75 that are, even up to $100 that you can buy that are a good, solid budget option that will hold zero even if you smack them around a little. Like, they're still pretty tough. You're not going to drag it behind your truck tough, but it's tough enough to where you could use it for home defense or something like that. The Bushnell TRS 25, at least the older model before they cheaped out on everything, is a good example of that. This thing is also not waterproof at all. But if you look under there, yeah, there we go. You can see them right there. So you can see that red. That's the wiring for this thing. So there's a lot of wiring exposed. There are gaskets on the battery compartment, so the battery compartment's probably water resistant to some degree, and the emitter looks like it's sealed on this end, so rain probably would be okay, but if you submerge this thing at all, I can't imagine it surviving. But that's, again, it's not, I don't think, designed as a duty optic. It's designed more as a range toy. And hopefully you all found this useful. Again, I would not suggest you buy this in general, personally, but if for some reason you just thought it looked so cool or you wanted to put it on a certain gun, I mean, as long as it's a range toy and you're not going to be using it for anything serious, it will probably hold zero just fine. Just know that if it bumps against anything, it's probably going to lose zero. So, but anyways, hopefully you all found this useful. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, comment down below. All that stuff helps the algorithm, helps other people find the video. But anyways, have a good one.